An American Airlines aircraft carrying figure skaters and coaches crashes with an Army helicopter in Washington, D.C. Coming up tonight, what we know so far and how the GTA skating community is reacting.
And beyond brazen, dramatic footage surfaces showing a stolen pickup repeatedly smashing through a jewelry store during an attempted robbery. We are live in Scarborough with more.
And the final version of Olivia Chow's budget is out. The 6.9% tax hike that is staying, but the mayor says the relief program is expanding. We'll hear from critics.
Plus, it's day 2 of the provincial election campaign. Where were the party leaders and what did they promise? That's coming up.
You're watching Live at 5.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. I'm Lindsay Biscaya.
And I'm Lena Ladafat. Thanks for joining us here on Live at 5. We are learning more details about a dramatic attempted robbery at a jewelry store in Scarborough.
We're going to go live to CP24's crime analyst, Steve Ryan, who's outside the store on Eglinton near Brimley tonight. And Steve, we're hearing from a family member of the owner now.
Yeah, you can imagine what it would have been like for the owner of that jewelry store to be inside of the store and then see this pickup truck reverse into the glass of the store in an attempt to steal the jewelry that was on the other side. So the city's latest act of violent criminality occurred at 6:30 yesterday in this very busy strip plaza lot on the southwest corner of Brimley and Eglinton. Police tell us, and we saw the surveillance video that corroborates what the police tell us, and that is that a stolen black pickup truck reversed into the window of the jewelry store. If I get out of the way, you can see that window has now been boarded up. A second vehicle pulls up, and 4 suspects got out of that second car. They were in masks, they had garbage bags in one hand and hammers in the other hand, and they can be seen on the video smashing the window of this store, and they could not break all of the glass, so they didn't steal anything, and they eventually gave up and all fled in another car, leaving the stolen pickup truck. So we did speak with a witness earlier on, and they gave us their reaction to this very particularly scary event that happened at 6:30 yesterday in this very busy mall. Here's what we were told.
My uncle just talking normally, and all of a sudden they heard like a loud sound, and they see a truck just reversing back into the store, and they panicked. They didn't know what to do. So my dad quickly went downstairs to off the main light because he knew what was happening. He's like, because this has been going on for like over the past few months. We've been seeing like a lot of jewelry stores being robbed, and we have been taking like safety precautions, like wondering like, oh, if we'll be next or not.
Right now, the reward of stealing property outweighs the risk of being caught. There needs to be some respect for the law, and there needs to be a bit of fear as well. Fear in this sense: if I get caught, this is what could happen to me. Right now, the reward out trumps the risk. The risk needs to be lower than the risk needs to be more than the reward. And until that happens, we're going to see this far too many times going forward. And this comes from police officers who I've spoken with throughout the day. Again, they say that the reward needs to be less than the risk, because the risk of being caught is what's going to deter other people from doing the exact same thing. Send it back to you guys.
All right, Steve Ryan reporting live from Scarborough. Steve, thanks so much for this. Well, a man has been charged in a shooting in Brampton last year.
24-year-old Trevarn Atkinson is charged with 1 count of attempted murder. He was held in custody pending a bail hearing. Police say Atkinson was already out on release for 2 counts of attempted murder and multiple firearm offenses at the time of his arrest.
The shooting happened back on March 9th in the parking lot of a plaza on McMurtry Avenue, south of Queen Street. The victim suffered multiple gunshot wounds but survived. Police say the accused was identified following what they are calling a complex investigation. Anybody with information about that case is asked to contact police or Crime Stoppers.
It's 5:04 right now. We will take a quick check on the roads with CP24's traffic specialist, Adjoa. How's it looking out there, Adjoa?
Ooh, it's been a busy go, Lindsay and Lena. If you're making your way out on the westbound Gardiner, you have to deal with the long-term road work, and now you have to deal with the problem in the mix. So westbound on the Gardiner, this is just through York Bay Young. Collision being cleaned up just that right lane blocked. There's not a shoulder, so they can't even move over to the side. So until this clears, your drive is going to be very, very backed up from well before Cherry Street. Then up on the 401 again, it's been a busy afternoon, still seeing those busy pockets as you try to make your way home, and traveling into Vaughan on the northbound 400. Still pretty busy as you make your way from Highway 7 up to about Major Mac. That's where things move a little bit better for you. Outside of camera view, a cruise on scene of a collision on Bayview right at Finch. I'll send it back to you both.
All right, Adjoa, thanks so much, and good to know. Well, Mayor Olivia Chow presented her finalized budget proposal today, and while it keeps a hefty property tax increase intact, it also makes homeowners eligible for more relief.
So for the details, we're going to go live to CP24's Sija Liu, who is at City Hall. And Sija, there's a couple different opinions on this one.
There is, and there always is when it comes to property tax increase. But the number that Mayor Olivia Chow is sticking with is a 6.9% increase to property taxes in her 2025 budget. Now, this is pretty much unchanged from her first proposal, but what is different is more supports, more tax break programs for seniors and people with disabilities. So the income threshold for tax relief programs for seniors and people with disabilities has been increased by 5% to $60,000. That means around 2,300 more households in the city will be eligible for tax relief. As for the proposed budget and what it would pay for, it would include things like transit improvements, such as the TTC fare freeze, hiring more police officers, expanded school meal programs, protections for renters. Money would also go towards expanding library hours and hiring more emergency responders. Now, Mayor Olivia Chow says this budget is all about making the city more caring, more affordable, improving the living in the city. And she says it is because she has to address a decade of neglect. Meanwhile, other city councilors aren't completely on board, saying the tax hikes really impact middle income families. Take a listen to what Mayor Olivia Chow had to say, as well as Councillor Brad Bradford.
More people will also qualify for water rebate and solid waste rebate programs. Importantly, the total multi-residential tax rate is set lower so that it is below the provincial threshold where landlords applied for above guideline rent increase. At a time when we know renters are already feeling squeezed, the reduction is an important measure.
The staff will put forward a proposed budget, but those are just proposals. You have to look at the line over line numbers from the previous year. And if you go line over line, you're not seeing a whole lot of savings. In fact, the story of this budget this year is you are paying more and getting less. That has to do with a lot of the collective bargaining agreements that have been signed this year, some of the most expensive collective bargaining agreements in the city's history, and a lack of prioritization. So this budget is actually making life more expensive for average Torontonians, not more affordable.
So how does this translate to homeowners? If your home is valued around $690,000, you'll be paying roughly $268 more annually because of this budget increase. And next up on the agenda is a special council meeting to discuss this budget proposal. And Lena and Lindsay, that will be on February 11th. Back to you.
Okay, we'll be watching for that. That's CP24's Sija Liu reporting live. Thanks, Sija. It's 5:08, -1 outside. This is Live at 5.
It is the worst U.S. aviation disaster in a generation. Coming up, the latest on a deadly collision between a passenger jet and a helicopter in Washington, and what U.S. President Donald Trump has to say about the cause. We're showing you live images of that rescue operation, that recovery operation. We'll be right back with more. The search for bodies in black boxes continues in Washington, D.C. after a deadly mid-air collision involving a passenger jet and a military helicopter.
The American Airlines jet carrying 60 passengers and 4 crew members collided last night with a Blackhawk chopper while approaching Ronald Reagan National Airport, causing both aircrafts to crash into the Potomac River. 3 soldiers were on board the helicopter, and all 67 people involved are considered dead. 28 bodies have been recovered so far.
And audio from air traffic control immediately after that crash has now been released.
Yeah, go ahead. Do we know what helicopter company? Pat. Pat? Yeah. Is that military? Yes.
Controllers told the American Airlines pilot to take runway 33. The pilot confirms he's clear to land, and the controller instructs the Army helicopter to pass behind the jet. No response was heard, though, but it's believed the helicopter responded on a different frequency.
And the chair of the NTSB says investigators will leave no stone unturned as they look into what led to this tragedy.
As part of any investigation, we look at the human, the machine, and the environment. So we will look at all the humans that were involved in this accident. Again, we will look at the aircraft, we will look at the helicopter, we will look at the environment in which they were operating in. That is standard in any part of our investigation.
This is video taken from the Kennedy Center in Washington, looking toward Reagan National, and you can see a bright flash can be seen. The passenger jet had taken off from Wichita, Kansas earlier in the evening. Passengers on the flight included a group of figure skaters, their coaches, and family members who were returning from a development camp.
And one of the victims has been identified as Gina Han. The 16-year-old skater was on the plane with her mother returning from a select camp of top young figure skaters in Wichita.
And 16-year-old Spencer Lane was also on the plane with his mother. Both Lane and Han trained at the Boston Skating Club almost every day, where retired Olympic skating star Nancy Kerrigan previously trained. Kerrigan spoke to the media this afternoon.
And then when you find out, you know some of the people on the plane, is even a bigger blow. Everything you've heard of them, like maybe being a little tough, but with a smile on their face. And anytime I walked in, oh, hi, it's so good to see you. It's always welcoming and happy to see one another. And so just to walk in here and not see that is, I think, would be very strange for everybody that comes here, especially those that are here day in and day out.
Now, U.S. President Donald Trump spoke about that crash today, partly blaming it on initiatives involving diversity, equity, and inclusion at the Federal Aviation Administration. Here's more on that.
It doesn't matter what they look like, how they speak, who they are. It matters intellect, talent, the word talent. You have to be talented, naturally talented geniuses. You can't have regular people doing that job. They won't be able to do it. But we'll restore faith in American air travel. I'll have more to say about that. I do want to point out that various articles that appeared prior to my entering office, and here's one. The FAA's diversity push includes focus on hiring people with severe intellectual and psychiatric disabilities. That is amazing.
Transport Minister Anita Anand says Canada's Transportation Safety Board will send 2 representatives to support U.S. officials in that investigation.
The plane that was impacted in the incident is a Canadian-made plane, and therefore the Canadian authorities are going to be participating in the investigation. But as a government, and certainly as a minister, I stand ready to support my American counterparts in this investigation, given the tragedy that everyone witnessed last night.
Now, all takeoffs and landings from the Reagan Airport were halted, but operations resumed at 11 o'clock this morning. However, all flights from Toronto Pearson to Reagan Airport, they're still canceled today.
It's 5:15 minus 1 outside. This is Live at 5.
It is day 2 of the provincial election campaign. We're going to have the latest from the campaign trail coming up. Stay with us.
Welcome back. The leaders of Ontario's main political parties have been out making their pitch to voters again today.
Yeah, it's day 2 of the provincial election campaign, and it has sent the leaders making announcements and meeting with supporters and voters all over the GTA and other parts of southern Ontario. PC leader Doug Ford was in Vaughan this afternoon for an event with the Labour's International Union of North of America. Ford started his day in London, where he pledged to protect Ontario's auto sector from the threat posed by U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs and economic policies.
Even if President Trump tears up America's commitment to the auto industry, we will not. I want to make it clear to every partner we have in Ontario's electric vehicle and battery supply chain, a re-elected PC government will honor our commitment to invest in the sector, no matter what decision the U.S. makes about the Inflation Reduction Act. We will maintain our financial contributions to the electric vehicle and battery auto pack, a landmark agreement that is attracting game-changing investments.
And Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie, meanwhile, was joined by supporters as she opened her campaign office in Mississauga this morning. She's running in the riding of Mississauga East Cooksville.
You know we're all here today because Doug Ford doesn't care about you, right? It's the truth. He's called a snap election in the middle of winter because he's trying to outrun an RCMP investigation. This election is not about tariffs. It's about Doug Ford's Ontario. He has wasted $189 million calling an early and unnecessary election. That almost $200 million could have been invested in our healthcare system to provide you with a family doctor. How many people in this room don't have a family doctor? Right? I see hands everywhere.
And Ontario NDP leader Marit Stiles started her day in Toronto, where she unveiled her campaign bus at Queen's Park before heading to southwestern Ontario. Stiles told reporters she's ready to stand up to the threats from the Trump administration.
I'm not interested in backing away now and giving up. I think the fight is on with Donald Trump against his threat to our country, our independence, our sovereignty, Ontario's economy, and I'm ready to fight, and I'm ready to get a good deal for Ontario.
And Green Party leader Mike Schreiner has been in Fergus and Georgetown today, knocking on doors and meeting with voters to hear about local concerns in that area.
And we are less than a month away from the provincial election, and the Ontario Autism Coalition is calling for action to address long wait lists and lack of supports.
Ontario's progress in giving children with autism access to government-funded core therapy has slowed so significantly that at times the number of kids enrolled is actually declining, despite a ballooning wait list. The number of children seeking services is more than 3 times higher than those who are receiving funding for key therapies. The president of the Ontario Autism Coalition says the services offered don't come close to meeting the demand.
What they did was they built a program for roughly 15 to 20,000 children to receive core clinical services with that funding, but no more. And since then, because of the prevalence of the prevalence of autism in Ontario, we've seen the waitlist balloon. There are currently over 73,000 children registered to access the OAP, the Ontario Autism Program Core Services, and the vast majority of them, over 50,000, are still waiting. So the program is not funded adequately. And beyond that, the program spending itself, it needs some reworking.
The election comes as families of children with autism have been speaking out about long wait lists for education and therapy in the province. CP24 spoke to one parent about the action she's hoping to see the next government take.
I hope we clear the wait list. There are over 70,000 children waitlisted for the Ontario Autism Program Core Clinical Services. And children like Regis, who registered in 2022, 3 years into his wait, we have no idea when he'll finally get speech and language therapy, OT, ABA, and psychological services that he has needed now since he was 2 years old.
Families on the wait list for key autism therapies are not given an indication of how long their wait will be, leaving them to try to calculate just how long they can afford to pay out of pocket in the meantime.
It is 5:22-1. You're watching Live at 5 on Toronto's Breaking News, CP24.
Coming up, we'll tell you more about the Toronto police officer who's been recognized with the Terry James Trailblazer Award to kick off Black History Month. Stay with us.
A distinguished Toronto police officer has been presented with this year's Terry James Trailblazer Award.
Staff Superintendent Kelly Skinner is responsible for the Eastfield Community Safety Command, which includes the uniformed divisions in the east end of the city. She spent time in major crime squads as well as intelligence gathering, and she also works with Big Brothers and Big Sisters community outreach.
During my career as a police officer, I have had the opportunity to recruit and mentor many amazing individuals. Staff Superintendent Kelly Skinner is one of those amazing people. Her achievements as a member of the Toronto Police Service can be attributed to her strength of character and willingness to sacrifice in the name of service to our community. But it is her commitment to duty and her personal integrity that has marked her as a leader throughout her policing career.
I am here, and I enjoy the career that I've had because of Terry. And what an adventure it's been. It really has. I've been so privileged. I started policing in the Jane and Finch community at 31 Division. And I say that's a real flagship, right, Clay, Mike? Right? And I saw really by my presence alone how important representation was, and how I could walk into a room as a Black female and positively impact and influence a situation involving people of the Black community and police.
Only through partnerships can we build communities that are safe, equitable, and strong. The chair spoke about our shared commitment, and we do have a shared commitment to co-produce, co-develop, and co-deliver community safety and well-being across our city with our communities. So thank you all for the work you do, not only with the Toronto Police Service, but within your communities where you live and work.
Well, this is a very exciting day. We're going to be delivering a great award within the service. And the celebration for Black History Month is really growing here. This is only the second year, but the community response and the people who want to be here to kick it off really indicates the change that we're trying to do through police reform and make sure that the community sees it and feels it. The feeling it is a long way to go, but we're working on it minute to minute.
And the presentation of the Terry James Award helps to kick off the recognition of Black History Month within the Toronto Police Service.
It's 5:27 right now, -1. This is Live at 5.
Well, it is the worst U.S. aviation disaster in a generation. We're going to have the latest on a deadly collision between a passenger jet and helicopter in Washington and what U.S. President Donald Trump has to say about the cause. Stay with us.
An American Airlines aircraft carrying figure skaters and coaches crashes with an Army helicopter in Washington, D.C. Coming up tonight, what we know so far and how the GTA's skating community is reacting.
Beyond brazen, dramatic footage surfaces showing a stolen pickup repeatedly smashing through a jewelry store during an attempted robbery. We're live in Scarborough with more.
And the final version of Olivia Chow's budget is out. The 6.9% tax hike is staying, but the mayor says the relief program is expanding. We'll hear from critics coming up.
Plus, it is day 2 of the provincial election campaign. Where were the party leaders and what did they say?
This is Live at 5.
Good evening, and thanks for joining us here on Live at 5. I'm Lena Ladifat.
And I'm Lindsay Biscaya. Welcome to Live at 5. The search for bodies and black boxes continues in Washington, D.C. after a deadly mid-air crash involving a passenger jet and a military helicopter.
The American Airlines jet carrying 60 passengers and 4 crew collided last night with a Blackhawk chopper while approaching Ronald Reagan National Airport, causing both aircraft to crash into the Potomac River. 3 soldiers were on board that helicopter. All 67 people involved are now considered dead. 28 bodies have been recovered so far.
And audio from air traffic control immediately after the crash has been released.
Crash, crash. This is alert 3. Crash. This is alert 3. Crash. This is alert 3. Where's the alert 3? It is off the approaching the runway 33. Approaching the runway 33. Helicopter crash. Helicopter CRJ approaching the runway 33.
And that audio is just chilling. Controllers told the American Airlines pilot to take runway 33. You can hear them saying crash, crash, crash. The pilot confirms he's cleared to land, and the controller instructs the Army helicopter to pass behind the jet. No response was heard, but it's believed the helicopter responded on a different frequency.
The chair of the NTSB says investigators have not been able to recover the black boxes from the wreckage yet.
We have not recovered the flight data recorders yet. We know they're there. They are underwater. This is not unusual for the NTSB. We have many times recovered flight data recorders in water. We have our lab right here that it's about a mile from the NTSB, so it's not unusual. And once we get those, we'll be able to get those read and information from them to be able to provide further information to you.
And this is video taken from the Kennedy Center in Washington, looking toward Reagan National. You can see a bright flash there. The passenger jet had taken off from Wichita, Kansas, earlier in the evening. Passengers on the flight included a group of figure skaters, their coaches and family members who were returning from a development camp.
One of the victims has been identified as Gina Hahn. The 16-year-old skater was on the plane with her mother, returning from a select camp of top young figure skaters in Wichita.
And 16-year-old Spencer Lane was also on that plane with his mother. Both Lane and Han trained at the Boston Skating Club almost every day, where retired Olympic skating star Nancy Kerrigan previously trained. Kerrigan spoke to the media this afternoon. She was quite emotional.
And then when you find out, you know some of the people on the plane, it's even a bigger blow. Everything you've heard of them, like maybe being a little tough, but with a smile on their face. And like anytime I walked in, oh, hi, it's so good to see you. It's like always welcoming and happy to see one another. And like, so just to walk in here and not see that is, I think, would be very strange for everybody that comes here, especially those that are here day in and day out.
Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump spoke on that crash today, partly blaming the crash on initiatives involving diversity, equity, and inclusion at the Federal Aviation Administration.
The FAA website shows that the agency's guidance on diversity hiring were last updated on March 23rd of 22. They wanted to make it even more so. And then I came in, and I assume maybe this is the reason. The FAA, which is overseen by Secretary Pete Buttigieg, a real winner. That guy's a real winner. Do you know how badly everything's run since he's run this Department of Transportation? He's a disaster. He was a
And Transport Minister Anita Anand says Canada's Transportation Safety Board will send 2 representatives to support U.S. officials in this investigation.
The plane that was impacted in the incident is a Canadian-made plane, and therefore the Canadian authorities are going to be participating in the investigation. But as a government, and certainly as a minister, I stand ready to support my American counterparts in this investigation, given the tragedy that everyone witnessed last night.
For more on the investigation into this tragic crash, we turn to John Cox, an aviation expert who's been following the developments very closely for us all day. John, good to be with you again. Obviously, everything about this is horrific. And one of the biggest questions right now is, how does something like this happen?
Well, that's a question that the investigators are certainly going to ask. The flight patterns that the helicopter and the jet flew are long-standing. They've been in use for decades, very successfully. I've flown the patterns of the jet many times. I've landed on that runway countless times, and I've had helicopters fly underneath me many times, and it's worked very, very well. What happened last night? Why the difference? What happened? And that's where I think the NTSB investigators are going to ask. They have gotten a lot of information from the air traffic controllers. They have the radar data, the air traffic tapes. They will interview the controllers. All of these bits of evidence will be assembled and then analyzed to come up with a probable cause.
And John, as you say, you know, there's so much information already, recordings from air traffic control as well. The black box hasn't been found. With that in mind, that we have so much information already to work with, how essential is it that that black box is found quickly?
I think the flight data recorder will be of some interest. The cockpit voice recorder, I think, will be of even more interest. What did the pilots of the jet know? What did they say? And did they mention anything about the helicopter? And what did air traffic control say? What did they hear? That's what's going to be important.
I'm struck by something you just said, John, that military jets flying around commercial aircraft, that's commonplace around Ronald Reagan Airport. Can you talk more about how common that is? And is that something aviation experts and decision makers need to take another look at?
It is very common for military helicopters to be in the same general airspace as commercial air travel airliners. We've used this for decades very successfully. The helicopters are limited to 200 feet. The jets fly over the top of them as they're going toward the runway. So we put all of this together. What happened last night is something unusual, something unexpected happened last night, and that's where they're going to focus their initial attention.
And obviously, recovery efforts still underway in the river right near that airport. There's a lot of environmental hazards and obstacles right now with ice and whatnot. Can you speak a little bit more about just how tough that's going to be for investigators to have that recovery effort?
The first responders have done a remarkable job. It's a Herculean effort. They've had divers in the water continuously. They've been getting wreckage out. They have been recovering bodies. Just really tough, hard work. You can't say enough about the commitment, the expertise, the professionalism, and the effort of the first responders.
Okay, John Cox, aviation expert. We want to thank you so much for your insights. Good to be with you, sir.
Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you. It's 5:39 right now. You are watching Live at 5.
Up next, U.S. President Donald Trump says 25% tariffs are coming this Saturday, but he might make an exception for oil. We'll explain.
We are learning more details about a dramatic attempted robbery at a jewelry store in Scarborough.
Yeah, let's go live to CP24's crime analyst Steve Ryan, who's outside the store on Eglinton near Brimley tonight. And as you watch this video, Steve, you realize there are people around. There's vehicles right there.
Mm-hmm. You know, there's vehicles and there's foot traffic as well. This is going to be one of the busiest strip plazas that in the city of Toronto. I mean, we're only an hour away from it being 24 hours since police said this has happened, and this place is absolutely filled with people. So what does that suggest? It reminds us all that criminals are prepared to take the chance because the reward of getting what they want far outweighs the risk of being caught. And that needs to be flipped before we're going to see any sort of improvement in this sort of criminality. And these suspects certainly weren't concerned about being seen last night at 6:30. So police tell us that at 6:30 p.m., a stolen black pickup truck reversed into the front glass of this jewelry store. It did it 3 times. And as it smashed into the glass, 4 suspects wearing masks, carrying garbage bags and hammers, got out of a second vehicle, and they went up to the front glass and they started to hammer themselves, trying to get inside and steal the jewelry inside. What they couldn't break all of the glass, so they gave up. And all 5 of those suspects then fled. So this is now a attempted robbery investigation. And it's a robbery because the violence is the car smashing into the window, and it was an attempted theft. If the owner wasn't inside, that place was closed, it would have been an attempted theft and a mischief. But because the car going into the window is the violence, and because there was a victim inside, this is now a robbery investigation or attempted robbery investigation as police look for these 5 suspects. Now, we did hear from a witness earlier on today, and here is some of that conversation. Let's listen.
My uncle just talking normally, and all of a sudden they heard like a loud sound, and they see a truck just reversing back into the store, and they panicked. They didn't know what to do. So my dad quickly went downstairs to off the main light because he knew what was happening. He's like, because this has been going on for like over the past few months. We've been seeing like a lot of jewelry stores being robbed, and we have been taking like safety precautions, like wondering like, oh, if we'll be next or not.
The risk of being caught, rather, needs to be greater than the reward. And until that happens, we're going to see these sort of crimes happen time and time again. So back to you guys.
Okay, that's CP24's crime analyst Steve Ryan reporting live. Thanks, Steve. Mayor Olivia Chow has presented her finalized budget proposal today, and while it keeps a hefty property tax increase intact, it also makes more homeowners eligible for some relief.
Yeah, for all the details, let's go live to CP24's Sija Liu at City Hall. Sija, good evening.
Good evening, Lena and Lindsay. There is not much change when it comes to Mayor Olivia Chow's final proposed budget for 2025. She is sticking with a 6.9% property tax increase. She says this budget is all about improving the living standards in the city as well as affordability, but not everyone agrees. And for more reaction to this, I'm joined by Stephen Mensah, who is the executive director of the Toronto Youth Cabinet. Stephen, your organization has been calling for the city to invest over $46 million into youth. That did not happen with this proposed budget. What is your reaction to this?
Yeah, so the Toronto Youth Cabinet is extremely disappointed. We were hoping to see much more meaningful additional investments made to support young people's socioeconomic conditions. And unfortunately, this budget by Mayor Chow is going to keep young people in a state of poverty, precarity, and longing for hope for a better future.
This budget does include some money when it comes to creating jobs for youth. Are you happy with what is being proposed, and where do you think it's possibly lacking?
We are definitely not happy because the budget proposes $339,000 for additional youth jobs, and that's only going to employ 8 young people, and that's for the Indigenous Youth Fellowship. So we were calling for a $17.5 million investment for youth employment to hire 4,500 young people in Toronto community housing in our most vulnerable communities. So 8 jobs is not enough. Young people deserve and need better from their city. We're also seeking for investments in more youth spaces, enhanced youth spaces in our neighborhood improvement areas and priority neighborhoods. We're seeking for more funding towards investments in violence prevention grants to support grassroots youth-led initiatives. At the end of the day, young people showed up. They came out and did their part when it came to the city's budget. 1 in 8 of the deputants at last week's budget committee, they were young people. 1 in 7 of the individuals who engaged the city in their pre-budget consultations, they were young people. And so young people don't deserve minimal investments. They deserve meaningful, historic investments that's going to lift them out of their negative conditions.
And why is it so important to invest in these youth programs? I know you have mentioned rising crime in the city, carjackings, jewelry store robberies.
Yeah, there's a rise in violence and criminality being disproportionately impacted by young people, but also disproportionately perpetrated by youth. And we're always saying the best antidote to crime is a good job. If you give a young person a job, it's not just about the money that's going to be put in their pocket. It's about the hope for a better future that a meaningful and gainful job is going to provide, which is why the Toronto Youth Cabinet, TNG, and our partners have been calling for the city to create a Toronto Youth Employment Program, which is going to deal with the core issue of youth employment, but also youth violence in the city of Toronto. Now, if we can't expect to have a thriving, safe, caring city if our young people are neglected. Full stop. And so if this city cares about our youth, we're going to make the necessary investments now to lift them out of their conditions and give them the opportunities that they deserve.
Well, thanks so much for joining us today, Stephen. We appreciate your time. So a few other points with this budget here. So 6.9% property tax increase. But what's new today is more supports for seniors, low-income seniors, and people with disabilities. There is a higher income threshold when it comes to qualifying for property tax breaks. That is now at $60,000. So Lena and Lindsay, that means around 2,300 more households in Toronto will be eligible for some tax breaks. Back to you.
Yeah, a lot of people need that relief. Sija Liu live at City Hall for us tonight. Thanks so much, Sija. Well, U.S. President Donald Trump says 25% tariffs on Canadian imports. They're coming on Saturday, but oil could see an exemption if the price is right.
That's coming on the 1st, Saturday.
But no oil tariff, no oil tariffs.
No, I don't. Well, I didn't say that. You said that. No, we may or may not. We're going to make that determination probably tonight on oil. Yeah, because they send us oil, we'll see. It depends on what the price is. If the oil is properly priced, if they treat us properly.
Trump says he will decide tonight if oil will be a part of the tariffs. Almost half of Canadian exports to the U.S. that could be hit by tariffs come from just 6 industries. Statistics Canada says those include oil and gas extraction and refining, auto manufacturing, aluminum, and aerospace. A 25% tariff applied across the board would increase the cost of the top 6 sectors' exports by more than $148 billion.
It is 5:49 minus 1 out there. You're watching Live at 5.
Coming up, the GTA's skating community is reacting to that deadly plane crash in Washington. The plane was carrying figure skaters and coaches. We've got reaction from closer to home right after this. Welcome back. We are learning more details tonight about an American Airlines aircraft that crashed with an Army helicopter in Washington, D.C. That plane was carrying figure skaters, coaches, and family members.
And for more on how the GTA's skating community is reacting to this tragic crash, we're joined live by Mike Rideout, General Manager and Chief Operating Officer of the Toronto Cricket Skating and Curling Club. Mike, thank you so much for joining us, even though I know it's been a really tough day for you and your team. Look, I know the skating community is tight-knit, and a lot of your members knew the victims. How is everybody doing?
It's a very solemn day for our club. Our club dates back, in the skating section in particular, to 1921. We have a long-standing relationship with the United States and a number of international skating federations. And on behalf of the Toronto Cricket Skating Club and the skating community, our hearts go out to the families, friends, and teammates of those lost in this terrible, terrible tragedy.
And can you talk a little bit more about just how tight-knit this community is within figure skating?
Sure. It's very common for skaters to travel across different countries in the world to be with the high-performance skaters. And in particular at our club, we've had for many, many decades now skaters that come from the United States to train with us. We have a number of skaters now who are from the United States, and everyone is close. They travel together, eat together, train together when they're on the road. It's a tight community. It's a very difficult day for everyone, as you can imagine.
And I'm sure it's especially tough for young skaters who have looked up to so many of these athletes.
Absolutely. It's such a tragic event when you have young skaters and young adults who have perished in this mid-air tragedy. And you're correct. Well, a number of our young skaters, it's been a very especially tough day, and we're doing our best to provide the support that we can for themselves, their friends, and their families.
Can you talk a little bit more about that support? Because, I mean, that's such a good point that there's so many really, really young skaters who are now dealing with this trauma and this grief. I mean, what supports does the club have in place?
We have first and foremost, we have a really tremendous board of directors to support us on providing support. We have our high performance coaches, Tracy Wilson and Brian Orser, have been speaking with the skaters and the coaches with them, our team as well. We're here to provide support if there's additional outreach that we need to provide to them. I know that our coaches have been in contact directly with the skaters to see how they're doing on such a difficult day and what we can do to assist. And we'll see what support is provided further as we go along.
And can I just ask you what today has been like for people at your club?
Quite solemn. The skating community, obviously, were just tremendously impacted by what occurred last night. As you know, and this happened, unfortunately, a collision and a plane crash many decades ago. That hasn't been forgotten by the skating community. And today, our hearts and minds are just with those families. And so there's been a lot of reflection you can see with the skaters, the coaches, just reflecting and really coming around and coalescing with each other, supporting each other in the community. That's really what we've all been trying to do today.
Okay. Mike Rideout, General Manager and Chief Operating Officer for the Toronto Cricket, Skating and Curling Club. So sorry for your loss once again, and thanks so much for taking some time.
Thank you. All the best to the families, and the passion and dedication to the sport of those who perished will never be forgotten.
Absolutely.
Yeah, what a loss. Mike, thank you for your time. We appreciate this. You're watching Live at 5 here on Toronto's Breaking News, CP24.
Coming up, Ajax's Sum 41 are getting ready to perform the final stop of their last tour together. Stay with us. That's coming up.
Better off on my
A Canadian rock band that started here in the GTA before achieving global fame is preparing for its last show ever.
Sum 41 from Ajax got their big break in 1999. Tonight's show at Scotiabank Arena is the final stop of their tour of the setting Sum.
5:59 minus 1. This is Toronto's Breaking News, CP24.
Thanks for watching. CTV News at 6 is next.